Hello and welcome to another episode of The Stew with JT Brew. I'm your host, Justin Taylor, alongside my co-host, Toast Clark. Toast, great to have you with us. We're going to do another little breakdown of the hockey season, get in some players we like, kind of run you through your draft room and kind of what to look for here on Fantrax. Stick with us here. You're in the stew now.
You up on trades and why you move, you ain't designed to lose. Find you jumping over seemingly nothing, racking up points, makes the game a little more fun to watch. Can drop release, we started with the mock draft and now we making a mockery of the leaderboard. Quite obviously not a scrub, so start an institute, make evaluations like a commissioner do. It's to the point your wife make you watch in a different room. Update your roster and pick and choose when you get some news. Not much that we enjoy more than sipping through, sifting through new statistics to make it to our end zones through different routes. Universities, institutes, down to homies who click in groups. I introduce you to the Stew with JT Brew.
Hello, Toast. Another edition here of The Stew, our second hockey episode, getting ready for the season. Thanks for joining me once again.
Yeah, thanks a lot, JT, for having me. This will be a nice little break. I've been pretty, I guess in draft season here, if you will, and it's been pretty intense over the past month. And I'm actually in the middle of another draft for a podcast I listen to, and heck, get ready for our home league draft this weekend. So pretty excited.
Yeah, we got our draft league come through. We're going to kind of walk through some of these steps as we get through in this episode of kind of the draft room for anybody that's kind of new to Fantrax or trying to figure out the draft room. We're going to kind of break it down for you and then go into some of our draft strategies and some things we're looking at it. Toast, big change for us this year. Let's kind of talk about it here. We just moved this league after over a decade on ESPN. We have moved the league to Fantrax. And boy, are we already excited about it. We're happy with all the changes. Kind of walk through some of the differences here that you get with this Fantrax compared to what we did on ESPN and why we like it so much more already.
Yeah, I would say for the first thing is the Fantrax platform in relation to other platforms like ESPN or Yahoo. It's just way more visually appealing. It's really easy to use. Provides, I guess, flexibility for league formats, different league formats, and we'll get into some of that as we go through the site here. Tons of scoring options. Scoring options are, I wouldn't say they're endless, but I'm telling you, it's very, very close to endless. And really talk about that draft room we're going to get in there, gives those users a dynamic draft room and a really colorful draft room as well. So all in all, again, as I'd said on the previous podcast, it's something we should have done 3 or 4 years ago, but just the options that Fantrax actually provides is a lot more greater than the other sites.
Yeah, big update by Fantrax here in the offseason before. We did 1 or 2 leagues in Fantrax prior to this season that we were in a couple together, but our home league was not on this site. But man, we've loved the differences and the changes. Let's kind of walk through. Tell me, if I'm a newbie to the site, kind of walk it through what I'm looking for as I'm trying to get ready for my draft and get set up on my homepage.
Yeah, first thing I'm going to talk about, JT, let's stay on that left rail there. All right. So very first, you're actually on the home page, and all those little icons of the hockey sticks on the left, that's all your different leagues. All right. Whether you end up having our home leagues on there, right? The Dog Pound Fantasy Hockey League. If you do any mock drafts, those will stay on there. The good thing is if you end up clicking, you don't have to click on it here, but if you were to click on where you have all those messages there, you can hide leagues as well. So you can pick and choose which ones you actually want on your homepage there. So I love those icons there on the left. Again, just that visual appearance that most sites don't have. But go ahead and start at the home button there up top, and let's talk about that a little bit. This is pretty straightforward here. This is your standings page. If you were to scroll down in the middle there and the matchups for the weekly matchups, pretty self-explanatory, but what I like down here, go beyond league notices, JT, keep going down. Players news. All right, so your team's player news is actually going to arrive there. You can end up navigating to your team, or you can end up having it where it's for the entire league. So I really like that because that keeps me from having to go over to X to find out, hey, our player's actually playing. One thing I will say ESPN and Yahoo does, they steal a lot from other sites. And they probably end up stealing from Fantrax, honestly, about player updates, whether they're going to play or not, any other notes with that player. So this can save a lot of time having to search around for other sites, be able to come here for that player news. And recent transactions over on the right-hand side there as well. So I do like to know, and is the team I'm playing this week, did they do a pickup? If so, is it going to alert me? Because I know that maybe you go ahead and short on pickups at this point. There's only 4 of them for our league they can do a week. So if I see them pick up a couple guys, I'm like, yes, all right, they only got a couple moves left. So I really, really like that being there.
Yeah, but that will show you trades. As you can see on here, we've got a couple draft day trades where guys traded keepers. So those kind of things all pop up in the off seasons. You can kind of see those moves as well.
Yeah, next, Justin, if you want to go over to the left toggle there again and click on scoring on the left nav. There you go.
There we go.
So I really like this feature. Most sites have this, all right, again, but it's the way it's visually appealing is what I really, really like about it. And if you look at, let's say, for example, JT, you're going to be playing our buddy McGlynn week 1, all right? And you can see all of the categories there for goals, assists, PIMs, shots on goal. That follows the scoring format of your league. So they kind of take the other statistics out of the equation, and they just list what really matters in that league, and I really, really like that about Fantrax. Also, again, up there in the middle, McGlynn versus JT, or Crackhouse versus Host of Jets and Lord there. If you were to scroll over right there, JT, yes. You can see right here it says 0, 0, and 5, and then 300. Those are how many plays a team actually is playing that week or that day and that week. Some leagues have where you are limited to how many plays you can have in a week, especially dynasty leagues are that way. But in our league, there is no limit. But that's what those numbers mean. And that 300, that's how many total minutes all of your players have if you were to combine all their minutes left in their games for that given day. So those are kind of what those numbers mean. A lot of people's like, what's that mean? And in the middle of those orange, that's your projected number. They'll continue in Fantrax if you give you a projection. And I do like that because ESPN did not have a projection. You're literally like, where am I? You just had to kind of sense that, yes, you were actually going to be good. But with here to actually give you some projections, which I really like.
Very nice. Yeah, I like that as well. I can see how many minutes I have left. You can see kind of how many players you have left versus how many players they have left for each day and how many minutes are left in there. So I always think that's a nice feature that I didn't see before. I was trying to figure out how many guys are still playing, who is still out there. So I love that feature.
Yeah, and over to the right, this is a little bit different than most sites where you have your player rosters over here to the right anyway on the same screen here. It only shows you who's playing that day. I really like that. You don't really have to see the entire roster. So that's a lot different than most sites as well. Most sites will show your entire roster. Fantrax is pretty good about just saying, hey, let's just cut through it. Let's not show the entire roster. Let's just get down to business and show you exactly who's in play for this given day. And I really, really like that feature.
Nice. What else are we going to go through here on the home screen?
Yeah, click on players. Let's look at what a free agent pool or a waiver wire pool actually looks like. And again, I like the filters. I like the filters a lot. Now, this one here is in draft mode when you look at all the players, because it's got, the average draft position, the ADP. It's got roster percentage and whatnot. Most times or not, and once the season starts in this feature, you will not see all of those. You're going to see what your league settings are. It's gonna align to your league settings. But this is pretty darn cool with all of the filters you can use. The star is basically if you want to put that on that player on a watch list. So again, I won't talk about this from a draft room perspective, but more so from a free agent perspective. But again, these filters normally on other sites, you have to go up to a filter button and you end up having to click that filter and then kind of refresh the page. Here, you can simply just click on the column, right, of the category. And here you just clicked on something there that's very, very good. No site that I actually know of gives you that many previous season statistics. I'll let you talk a little bit about that, JT.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. This is one of my favorite things to look, because I like when I'm going to do a draft, I always want to look at the projected season. I want to see what they're thinking guys are going to score, but I also want to compare that to what they did last year in my league. So I always like to go in and see, is there a couple guys where the scoring is way different, for the projected year to date, like going to be happening, or what it did the year before. So I like to go back and see, kind of last year, what guys scored. And then I can go in and see, you can see Pastrnak had way more than he's projected this year. Some guys are going to be less. It just kind of depends on the scoring changes, if you made changes or not. But I like to see that too, because sometimes guys have changed teams. Maybe that's going to change their projections. But I want to go back and see what guys have been productive and not necessarily rely 100% on the computer generated averages. I want to see, especially in the later rounds, I want to see some guys that, maybe they put up really good numbers. Maybe they're not projected as high this year, but they were really good last year. Maybe I get a steal late in the draft.
Absolutely. Those trends we talk about, where, geez, a player may end up being on a hot streak or a cold streak, but you can end up going and see what they did last year, even maybe the year before, and kind of get a sense, is that going to be sustainable, or whether it's good or bad, right? And so I definitely like, especially with the free agent pickups, I love having the option to go back and look at the previous seasons. And again, I'll continue to say this with Fantrax. I don't know. I'm on Yahoo leagues. I'm on ESPN leagues. I'm on this league. Those other sites do not do that. So that is super helpful.
Yeah, the compare button I like a lot. You can do the compare list of the guys if you're looking at a player versus a player. I love the star button that you talked about to add the watch list. I love to do that, hit guys that I'm thinking about possibly picking up, and then they put them on a list for me, and then I can easily just click my watch list, and it shows me those guys, what games I got coming up, how they've been scoring. I always think that's super helpful. Where you're looking through guys, or say you're looking over, a list like Dauber, and they're like, hey, keep an eye on this guy. I always think that's always nice to go back, star that guy, and then kind of keep an eye on him, especially if they're younger players. Got to keep an eye on them throughout the season.
Do it all the time. Yeah, again, it's a great feature. You can even see underneath the statistics by year to year, the ease of being able to track by position, and also too being able to ease of being able to switch over to rookie. That rookie button there is great for dynasty leagues, to see who's minor eligible. It's just a really cool feature. Again, other platforms, you have to basically listen to a website or a podcast, go to a website, identify that player, and then go try to find them. Here, they will filter those players for you. And then let's say you were to click on rookie, then at some point you could go ahead and see percent rostered, right? And see who else is actually rostering them. And that kind of narrows it down to, all right, what's the popular pickups throughout Fantrax for all fantasy players? So pretty cool feature right there.
Yeah, I always like that, especially if I'm trying to find a guy and I don't 100% know how to spell his name. I know he's like a defensive player. I'll hit D and start typing in the first couple letters. A lot of times that will pop up, and I like to do you can do available players, but sometimes I like to do it where I can hit all players, and then that allows me to figure out if a guy's on a team and I want to try to trade for him or not. And it lets me know who has him without having to search through every team in my league to figure out who that guy's on. So I think that's a really nice feature, especially when you're looking at trade values. Instead of saying all available players, you can go in and you can pick guys just on your team. You can watch guys on your watch list. You can look at just free agents, or you can just put all players taken, and you can make sure you look at if a guy's taken or not taken. So sometimes you just don't know if a guy's on the waiver wire. So, hey, I like to do that. See if he's available. If he's not available, is he on a team? And then I maybe want to make a trade offer for him.
Yes. You know what I love to do is click on all, and then let's say my team's 6-0, through 6 weeks. Then I can go through and click on all and then see how many players I actually have total based on fantasy points in the top 10. Like, yeah, I'm dominating. I actually got 5 players in the top 10 right now. And it's great also too, by clicking on all and then clicking on a position. Then you can see, without having to go through every single team, find out like, man, that team is stacked with defensemen. they got 3 out of the top 4 defensemen, but it looks like they're pretty weak at right wing or they're weak at forward. I could actually offer a trade there. So just again, having those extra filters is awesome. It keeps you from having to go to the standings page, click on that team, and then remember actually what they have. And that I love that. I use that all the time.
Yeah, it's nice when it shows up next to you, tells you what team owns what guy. I like to do it in a hit and just see if there's any players like in the top 30, 50, 60 that aren't on a team that are free agents. Cause then I'll flip through the list. I'll go look down here and it says status right now, everybody's free agent in our league because we're waiting on the draft. But you can see where a guy's not taken on a team, he's a free agent. You're like, ooh, that guy's out there. I need to pick him up. So that's what I like to do. Or a guy that's maybe on the injured list that somebody dropped and you're like, oh, that guy's coming back in a couple weeks. He was pretty high scorer before that. I like to look at that and say, hey, that's a guy that I need to have on my roster that maybe people are just kind of forgetting about.
Yeah, speak about injuries there. You can see that even that Brandon Montour down there, a defenseman, he'll be back in January sometime for Florida. But man, he's still projected for a lot of points, still projected for 371 fantasy points. And that's a partial season right there. That's because he's only got 11 goals, 28 assists. So, but yeah, love that. And really, these hover features, that's a little bit different.
Yeah,
as
they're
well.
nice. So you can
I
kind of
can't think
click
of
on
it.
them, like hover over them and pull up stuff. It's kind of nice.
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead and click on roster, JT, over there on the left pane, and let's go over that one. Now, this is your normal roster for your team, and you can see right here. This one's yours because I can tell your players. So you got your keepers involved there. Age. I love that they list age on there. It may not work for our league because we're not a dynasty league, but man, for dynasty league, age having them there, that is great. Go ahead and click on Jack Hughes. Just click on his name and let's see what comes up there. And then click on more in the top right-hand corner. Yeah, you can even see right here, obviously, he was the #1 draft pick overall in the 2019 draft. This is great for dynasty drafts, knowing where a player was drafted. I don't need to go to a website and see specifically where he went. They're really, really good about that. See the height and the weight and all of that right there. ESPN, Yahoo, they don't do that. They did not actually put any of that stuff. So I may end up thinking, you know what? this is the Bangers League. And I need a lot of hits. I need a lot of blocks, and I end up needing defensemen. And he's got a good background. He may be a high draft pick, and also too, I see in juniors through the stats that he actually hits and he blocks quite a bit. And I see that he's 6'3". Okay, that's what I want to see. That's going to give me a lot of information about the player and say, you know what, he's probably going to throw his body around a little bit. A player I actually want to draft at that point. So I love that more feature up top there that gives you a little bit more about the player, about his personal attributes, if you will.
I like the fact that they show the cap hit and some of the salary numbers and stuff because we're in an actual dynasty salary cap league. And so the fact that those numbers are popped up on there, I think are super helpful. What do you think about that?
Oh, it's amazing. I will rely on Cap Friendly a lot because it doesn't really give the term of the deal. It just kind of gives the yearly cap hit, but nevertheless, like again, that's great right there. So it seems like with our teams, especially JT, that you and I co-manage for Dynasty, we're always up on the cap. You know, we're kind of in a win now mode, whatever. So it's nice to have that feature there where you can look at it and see specifically if that may be a player that, you know what, they're coming up on the end of their deal. They're quite a bit of money. I got a lot of young guns there in the minor system. They're ready. They're getting some opportunities this year. And then I'll actually go to my spreadsheet and I'll start circling those guys, but I can come here and look at that cap hit. So pretty cool feature right there. And if you click off there, you can see and just click on anywhere in the page. There you go. You can see that, you know, our format for our home league is forwards, right? We have all forwards. We don't use right wing, wing, left wing, and center. We have forwards, we have skaters, we have defensemen, we have goalies, and you have reserve spots. But down here is what I love. This shows you specifically this year's draft, what picks you have after trades. Once we get in a draft room, that's going to mean a lot. But I love using this because I can come to anybody's roster and I can see what picks they have available for the 2024 and 2025 season and see, you know what, they got a first round pick. I know they actually need a little bit of help here. I want to go ahead and initiate a trade. So I may just look at this and be like, yeah, instead of having to ask them, hey, did you trade that away? Or have to text them, do you still have a first rounder? Not having to remember, the site does it for you. That's what we've been used to over the past decade, is really going back through old text messages, going back through text messages I took a picture of, like who's got what's going on.
Yeah,
you know,
who's got the draft board?
Right.
Who took a picture? Who remembers this? Who
Yeah.
remembers that? Now it's all saved. It's going to be so much easier going forward for us.
Yeah, this right here is great. And even then you can click on that little trade button there, and that gives you the option to go ahead and include those within a trade. Very user-friendly right there.
Yeah, but it shows you different years. You can pick different round draft picks. If you got players, you can pick different players. It's great.
Yeah, it is. It is. This is, again, I'll continue to say it, visually appealing. It works like an app or a website should. You get on some certain sites where it's like, all right, I'm confused. At this point in 2023, the majority of the time we have a phone in our hand all day, every day. We shouldn't be really confused by anything. And this site actually delivers. It doesn't really confuse you at all. It's very easy to navigate through.
Do you want to move on to the draft room, kind of take a look at what we're looking at, the new updates and what's going on there?
Oh, yeah. This is the best part. This is the absolute best part of the entire Fantrax app, in my opinion. So,
all right, so we're in.
Yeah, so what I want to talk about here first, this is just little things, but background colors. You know, you have your top toggle bar, if you will, or your top toolbar. It's a blue banner. That's where you have your clock. That's actually where you have your status of the draft. And even the commissioner tools over to the far right, those three little dots, those are great. And go ahead and click on those three dots if you could, JT. And that's going to, again, if you're the commissioner, that'll give you the option there to go ahead and pause the draft or rewind the draft or undo the last pick. You can even do auto draft from here, and go ahead and click on auto draft from queue only. And this next one down. Go ahead and, go ahead and click.
About that. I actually like this this auto draft one. If you're in a league that's like on a timer, like a longer hour one, where you can auto draft just one pick. I used this a ton during my college football season earlier in the year, where I was like getting ready to go to bed and I knew I was going to get up at like 6 a.m. was when my turn was going to come up, and I would just auto draft from my queue and I could pick just one. It was great. And then if it got back to me again, then it stopped and waited for me. That's a feature that none of the other drafts have that I thought was amazing when I was doing slow drafts throughout the summer.
Yeah, that is huge because you don't want to slow up the rest of the draft, right?
Exactly.
Especially when you're drafting for a month. You want to really be proactive, and it may be where you're like, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and click on auto draft from my queue only. And then the auto draft number, I may move to 6 because I may say, you know what, I'm happy with any of those 6 players. And I have a feeling that someone will get it taken, but I'm going to let it go ahead and go 6 deep. And whoever I get, that's fine by me. Get up in the morning, realize that you have some time, and you may go ahead and click there in the top right-hand corner and take the auto draft off. You can easily see who is on auto draft. If you X out of this, JT, we can see who's on auto draft by having a little tiny icon, and it's not showing up there, but it will. It's a little tiny icon just to the right of Yzerman in my pants' icon there, and it'll have a little tool wrench there, and that'll mean you're on auto draft. Plus, another feature I like as we move down to the draft board, you can see where you have a green halo around your team name, and that means that you are present in the draft room. So how many times have we entered into a draft and you're like, are you in? Are you not?
Yeah, is everybody
here? Are you ready?
Somebody text him. Yeah, it's like,
it's ridiculous. Yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, so I can literally sit there, whether I'm the commissioner, or whether I am just a player in the league, and I can see, yep, everybody's lit up. Everybody's ready to go. Everybody's here. Let's move. That's an awesome feature. But what's even better, let's go to the draft board itself and take that middle drag bar, JT, and move it down all the way so we can see the entire draft board. And this is the best feature of Fantrax, and this is the main reason why we moved to this site, is most formats, when I say format, sorry, most platforms, you can only have keepers, and they kind of count as your first 3 draft rounds. Let's say you had 3 keepers. Well, they're going to count as your first 3. Here, you can put draft tags on players and place them around the board. No other site does that. That's awesome. And you can see underneath the second team's column, Hull and Oates. You can see in their first round draft pick, there's a different team listed. And it's Hosas Jepson's Malort. And that means that there's been a trade. That Hosas Jepson Malort actually owns that pick, and the computer actually will give them that pick. Again, other drafts, or other platforms, you may have to do that by hand and say, after the draft, we're going to go ahead and make that trade and make it all happen. Like, it's messy, right? This makes it very, very clean. What do you like about this, JT, this draft board here?
I love this trap. The fact that we've been, as a keeper league, has been the biggest issue. Like you said, that usually if you do keepers, it's the first 3 rounds. It's just like you have to keep the best 3 players you have. And the difference on this league is I'll kind of go through the draft board here and go down so you can see we have guys kept all over the place in different rounds. And the reason we do our keeper league this way is because we want you to get value for drafting, where you drafted, right? We said, hey, if you drafted well and you took guys when they were young and you took them and held them, that you should be able to get rewarded for that by being able to keep a guy late. So that's where we've done it. Now, that made things impossible in past drafts if you were trying to do anything but a live draft. You had to have everybody at the live draft. You had to have a board where you wrote everybody's name in the round. You kept them. You had to write in all the trades by hand. And we talk about it all the time. Me and you, as people who commish a ton of leagues, we talk about it constantly. It's so hard to get people together for a live draft anymore. People are just in too many leagues. Too many people have kids where they've got stuff going on. It's so hard to get work schedules all lined up. And so you almost have to do at least half the league almost always has to be online. It's just the way it is. And so doing a Zoom call where they're like on the call, like trying to like, who were the last 5 draft picks so I can figure out who got taken. And then like, okay, I want this guy, because you're trying to do a keeper league where you can't put everybody in, you can't do it online because it doesn't work. Well, now we fix that problem. Now we are able to do it where, hey, the guy in Chicago that's 2 hours away from us, if he can't come down for the draft, it's okay because it's not going to hold everything up. We don't have to stop and be like, oh, wait, just don't draft that guy because he's going to be a keeper in the 5th round. So make sure nobody takes him till the 5th round because we couldn't put him in the computer in the 5th round. This saves a ton of those problems and issues. And I just love it. I love that we've got, we're going into the draft now instead of seeing like, hey, I walk in the draft. Okay, who kept who and where are the trades? I'm seeing this in advance. You knocked this out a week ago. Everybody in our league can get on here, see who's kept, see what round they kept them in, see what trades are made, and you can make your draft strategy off of that. Now, even better is now, because we are doing it online, now me and you and a few other guys always get together in person because we always love in-person drafts. They're the best thing ever. So we're going to get in person anyway. But it saves you from printing out all that paper, crossing guys out, trying to remember who got taken, who didn't, because now you're just going down the draft list and it's automatically taking guys out. And you can see, do I need a defenseman? Oh, man, yeah, I don't have any defensemen by the color coding. You can easily see who's already loaded on defense. Oh, maybe I'll wait another round or two because all these guys have a bunch of defensemen. Maybe I don't need to go early. Maybe I can wait on goalie without having to go back and like, how many people have goalies? How many don't? It just makes it so much easier. I mean, I'm stoked for the draft this year. I think it's going to be so much easier this year. And then, and especially, for those guys that like to indulge and have a few drinks at the draft, it's always nice to have a little bit more color coding, a little more thing to keep the draft in order for you. And the best part is you don't end up getting stuck waiting on people forever. We usually just turn off the timer altogether. Now, if you're trying to get a draft over a certain amount of time, obviously you can adjust that timer to 2 minutes, minute and a half, whatever you want to do. But I feel like we move through things pretty quickly because people can see the color coding. They can see how many players they have. It's just a lot more readable. And then now we're not worried about people. Oh, did they miss 5 guys that they forgot to mark off? And they're just drafting guys that already been, kept or already been taken. So to me, keeper league, this is what I've been asking for a decade. Can we keep a guy in the round that we drafted him in? And can we put trades into the draft automatically so that everybody can jump in and do the draft? Because in the past, the only way to do it was if you wanted to do it online, the commissioner had to put in every draft pick himself in order, and you had to make sure you saved the keepers and had it written down what round they went in, and you put those guys in for them. If not, you had to do a live draft or it just didn't work.
Yeah, you're giving me flashbacks to COVID. When you talk about getting on a Zoom call and
it was brutal.
And was setting up a microphone and making sure that people could hear you because A, they couldn't make the draft because of COVID, but B, they can't make the draft because, well, they just can't make it now. So but this color coordination here, to me, I love it. Again, I'm just a visual person, so I really like that. But you can see, like for here, defensemen are always purple. Goalies, nobody kept a goalie in our league. Goalies always gold or yellow. All right, so you'll see forwards. Forwards have a red or they have a blue. And you're like, well, why are they different? Well, I'll tell you why they're different, because we just in our league just call everybody a forward. But and then you also have this orange. But if you do positional drafting, centers, left wing, right wing, blue is always right wing, red is always left wing, and then orange is always center. So that consistency that the site offers, you're in enough Fantrax leagues, you'll remember that. I don't even need to look at the position. I just know, yeah. So a lot of times we show up to where we're filling out a board by hand, like you said, and we have almost kind of like, what's the colors going to be this year? So these boards, they keep them too in the site. You can go back and actually look at them. I don't have to take a picture on my phone and then send it out to the league and say, hey, here's the board from last year. You can simply go into the site and see it. And the more people that get used to those colors, the more they're just going to be able to glance at that and know that, yeah, these are these players. It seems kind of petty, but quite frankly, when you're actually looking, especially at who's heavy at what position and who actually went where and strategies, it really helps with that.
Yeah, I think it's great. Like I said, I've got a baseball league that we've been on ESPN forever too, and that's been our biggest issue is where we have people in Alaska in the league, people in Indiana, people in Illinois, people live everywhere, and we've tried to do keeper leagues like this where you get the guy in the round you drafted him in. Can't do it because we have to do it online, and we basically just have to say, hey, the first 3 picks are all keepers, and it doesn't matter where you drafted them in. And so someone like me, who I like to take some chances on some rookies and hold them for that value later in their careers, that doesn't help me at all to take a guy and hold him all year his rookie year if he's going to be a first, second, or third round draft pick anyway. If I got him in the 12th or 13th round. But now with Fantrax, you can do that. And I'm going to be pushing hard for my baseball league to move to Fantrax next year for this exact reason. The color coding and the fact that you can split guys up in the trades and you can keep the guys in the round they were in. It's a huge difference maker. Big time for keeper leagues.
Yeah. Before I even knew what the site could do, that was the main reason why we moved over. Then once I got into it and started commissioning this league and seeing all the settings, like, whoa, I didn't even realize it could even do that. If you could, that drag bar there, go ahead and drag that up. Let's look at the bottom half of the board here. So this is your draft board. And again, this is probably what you would expect a draft board to be. But again, as we were looking at through free agency, when we clicked on players, you still had that option to click on season or projection. And you had the projection, but you can also look back through all those other years during the draft. Here's what I like to use, the team button there in the middle. All right, so I may know that, let's go ahead and go to Boston, for example. And I can see Boston, and I can already know, look, all right, Zaka, he's available down there. You know, he's going to be their first line center likely and get top power play. And we'll talk about Zaka. But I can see if he's still available, and I kind of know his deployment. You know, McAvoy, knowing he's their power play quarterback on that top power play, that he's available. But also, dude, go ahead and click on JT, click on Skater, the Skater filter button there. Once you click on Skater or defenseman, whatever, that's when the stats pop up. And these are the projected stats here. Wow, Pasternak, 55 goals. How about it?
Well, and that's to say you can see
shots.
like the Zaka, so like 251. So like I'll look at a guy like him and I'll like, okay, what did he do last year compared to what is he predicted for? So I'll look and say, okay, he had 291 fantasy points per game. You know, his ADP was 177. Fantasy points for this year, 238.6. Okay, that's what he did last year. What is he looking like he'll do this year? You know, and then I can click, okay, they got 251, a little over 3 a game. So they're you know, assuming that he's going to get a little bit of a bump. So I might look at him and go, okay, I'm maybe going to draft this guy a little higher than maybe I would have, depending on where he finished last year. And you see a guy that's maybe projected for a bump, and there's guys that are projected for like, you know, a little bit of a down year. Why is that? That's what I want to know. I look at him like, okay, is this because did he move from, you know, first line to third line? Now, do they have some young guys that are kind of come up? This guy's a little older. He's going to drop. So maybe I want to wait on him. Maybe I'll still take him, but maybe I'll take him 2 rounds later than I maybe would have originally.
Yeah, click on throw 3 guys in the queue. So from Boston, go ahead and throw those top 3 guys in your queue. And head over to your queue and go ahead and left click on McAvoy, and where those arrows are next to McAvoy, and over to the left, and move him all the way up. There you go. Yeah, you can just go ahead and just move these guys up and down like that. Use that feature a lot. Again, on the other platforms, you know, it may be where you can move players up and down, but it's not as easy as this click and drag. You have to almost use a little arrow button to move them up, like one at a time. Like it's easy. This to me is like, whomever got together and made Fantrax was like, I'm going to take every annoyance from every site I've ever been on, and I'm going to eliminate those. To me, that's what happened. But this is the draft queue. Yeah, I love the draft room.
I just love the way the queue works. I mean, the fact that you can just click on the plus sign, it goes under your queue, and you just get you can go team by team. You can go in order. You can add guys, and then, you know, as you're seeing guys as the draft's going along, okay, let me add this guy, let me add this guy, let me add this guy, and then you can literally move guys up and down, get a better spot. You know, so you're looking at a team and say, I'm like, okay, say I'm looking at Colorado, and I'm like, oh, you know, I'm not going to take this guy early, but maybe I want Girard as a defenseman late. You know, I'm thinking, okay, I can get him later. I still want to put him in there. And then when I add other guys, I just put him in front of him. So I don't forget to add him my queue. And then when I'm looking at it later in the middle of a draft going, oh, who was that guy I was thinking I kind of wanted late as a defenseman? I've already got Girard in there. He's already in my list. I go, oh yeah, that's him. He's there. And you can kind of look at those things. I love that queue feature. I think it's really easy. And the fact that you can just drag and drop guys up and down, and then those guys will pop out of your queue once they get drafted. It's so nice. So it will tell you, like, those guys will get moved out of your queue. I mean, you can put 5-6 guys in there. If 4 of the 5 guys get drafted, they'll all pop out, and the next guy will be up on your queue. And you can say, okay, I like that guy, I'm drafting him. Or you go back and look and say, am I missing somebody, and pick somebody else there. I love that because I could get guys that early on I'm kind of looking at for later rounds and make sure I don't forget about them. And you could go in there and fill that queue before the draft even starts, you know, if you want to, as deep as you want to make that queue.
That's what I was just getting ready to mention. You know, in our last part, we'll actually mention about this draft board is once you set the draft date, that draft room's open. And again, that's another feature that a lot of, you know, leagues or platforms do not have, where I've been begging people in our league, and they've been doing it, is going in the last couple of weeks, 2-3 weeks, and start setting your queue. Get familiar with a Fantrax platform. But because I know that they've been in there, because again, when I go in there myself to actually start setting my own queue, I can see that green halo around their team, and they're like, "Yep, so and so's in there right now. They must be setting their queue." So it kind of promotes that engagement there. But man, this is the best part about the entire platform to me right here.
I love it because there's so many leagues you can't even get in there, look at the queue, look at the scoring, figure out what the people are projected at until an hour before a draft, and then you're just scrambling to try to figure out who you want, where, when. You can't see the keepers. You got to text out all the keepers to everybody. Now you can get in. I can look at the draft board and go, okay, I like this guy. Oh yeah, he got kept in the 14th round. He's obviously I can't even put him in my queue because I go to look for him. I search him. It's gonna be like, oh, he's on a team already. And then those factors to me, just helps you get so prepared. Because again, not everybody has the same amount of time. Maybe you have your draft on Sunday. Maybe maybe Wednesday night is the only time I have the time. I'm listening to a podcast and filling out my queue right now. Maybe that's when I have time to do it. So I love that. I love the fact that you can enter the draft room before it starts and you can make adjustments. You can look at stuff. You can move guys around. To me, that's fantastic. It makes everybody more prepared, has them ready to go. And then, like you said, now we don't have to have the timer. We don't have to worry about it being a 5-hour draft because guys are prepped and prepared. They've got guys up there. And they know what they're doing because they know how to use the draft board. And we're not having to pause. Oh, I don't know how to do that. How do I do this? And then we're pausing constantly or fixing. Oh, I picked the wrong guy, hit the wrong button. You kind of eliminate a lot of that. I think it's great. And again, I think after we use it this first year, it's just going to be easy as can be from years, moving forward now that people are going to be used to it.
Yeah, you always have a few guys in a league that may not be what they would call quote unquote computer savvy, right? But with this type of platform, it caters to really everybody. When I say everybody, like regardless of your technical expertise, if you will, it's again very visually appealing, very easy to use. So yeah, excited about it. That's the draft board, everybody. That's the Fantrax site in a nutshell. Yeah, challenge everybody to kind of ditch your other leagues, your other platforms, and head over to here, give it a try, and you'll probably be pretty pleasantly surprised on how well it works.
Yeah, man, I'm super pumped for it. And, if you got any questions, feel free to hit me up, JT Orange on X, hit Toast Clark up on X. We've got any questions about how he's doing stuff. He's our commissioner this league. I commission a couple other leagues, mostly college football leagues for me on Fantrax, but go ahead and hit us up. We'll answer any questions you can, or we'll shoot you in the right direction. We'll figure out somebody at Fantrax to kind of help you out and tell you they've been really, really good. I'm in a couple other leagues where people are very novice to Fantrax, and they're really good about hitting us back with like, here's how you click this, and then you're there and fixing stuff pretty quickly. So that's nice. But it comes to that time of the show. We're here about 40 plus minutes in. We are going to get into some Toast Takes. So our Toast Takes, this segment, we're talking about intriguing players to look out for as you enter your draft here. We just talked about the fundamentals of the draft. Now let's talk about some players we're hyped for, some things we're looking for as we head into the season.
So JT, this section as we move forward in our shows, in this future shows we're going to do, really want to talk about in this segment about players, hot streaks, cold streaks, deployment opportunities taken away, injuries that may end up affecting either the player or other players on the team, and how that domino effect is going to actually affect that given team. And even get down to schedules, what schedule will be beneficial for teams, or, for a given week, where schedule may end up being not so beneficial. So that affects all of the players in a pool, in a free agent pool, or actually whether or not you're on your roster, and some more than others. And we'll try to identify those players to give you a little bit more insight on that. And I got a couple players I'd like to talk about today.
Yeah, let's just jump right into it. Give me some guys you're liking, you're looking at, maybe have kind of just sneaky plays on your roster, guys that you're that maybe aren't super high up on the list, but some guys you think are going to have some pretty good years and you can get some pretty good value on.
Yeah, I'll start in Toronto. And maybe talk about that team in general. Toronto, they lost a lot of players. For years, they've been up against the cap. They still have a really great core in Toronto's of the Matthews, Marner, Tavares. But man, those three players take up so much of their cap space. They've really been in flux, and they've had a chance to turn over. They're looking at guys like Matthews now to maybe even do some penalty killing for them. So guys taking on more roles. As guys take on more roles and more responsibility, how's that going to affect their fantasy stats? So, for example, they have a young player named Matthew Nyes. He's a 20-year-old player. I believe he was drafted in the 2021 entry draft as a second rounder. Good size winger, real big guy, 6'2". Many believe he's going to start the season on the left wing of Tavares there on the second line. He has always traditionally been a point per game player in the juniors in the NCAA. He really could be one of those late steals in a draft. I mean, given his deployment, look at who he's actually going to be playing with in a top 6 role in Toronto. Again, you get down to the 19th, 20th, 21st draft picks there in the rounds, may end up being a guy that could be a steal, especially in those keeper leagues where you have a 22nd round or a 20th round, and you can keep them for that many years and have them slide up a little bit, man. The value, the trade tag to be on that guy could be tremendous. But having him come in and play in Toronto has a trickle-down effect. And let's talk about who that could affect. And it could affect your guy, your boy, who you actually love, William Nylander.
Love Nylander. I always take him every year, man. I got to have him. He's been my guy for a long time. I love those Swedish players, especially the guys on really good offenses.
Yeah, and they're on a great offense, and Nylander's he plays on the wing. He's traditionally a left winger, but this year in the preseason, there's been some discussions about him playing center, and the reason they want to maybe move him to center, which traditionally he hasn't done, is because they're really trying to balance out that offense now. Given they've actually lost so much, and they don't want to be so top heavy. There's been talks about him, and even in the preseason, they've had him playing on a third line. So he's not playing with those Matthews. He's not actually maybe playing with those Tavares players, but they're actually now saying, we want you to drive a line for us, being that center drive and play. The reason I think they're actually doing that, and from a lot of the articles I've read and actually a lot of the podcasts I listen to, and just applying common sense, is he's on the last year of his deal, which I believe is around $6.96 million a year. He's on the very last year. He's an unrestricted free agent next year. Guy's going to end up commanding about $10 million a year, and that's going to be big for dynasty leagues. So what Toronto's wanting to do is like saying, if we're going to pay you $10 million a year, and we're already paying 3 other guys $10 million a year, which honestly, I don't know how they're going to do that. They're going to make sure that, hey, he can just do more than just receive the puck on the wing and actually score. He's got to take some more responsibility. So how is that additional responsibility on Nylander and that different line deployment? How's that going to affect his scoring? And so you got to be a little bit hesitant. When I say hesitant, meaning second round and 10 to 12 team leagues, maybe he's a third rounder, right? He may end up being somebody you shy away from, but this guy, he's always produced. He always has. So it may end up being where it's going to be fine, but there's some things to think about there.
Yeah, see, that's someone for me that's a big Nylander guy. I got to look at that. I tend to reach on him. I always take him around too early to make sure I get him. Maybe this is the year I see if he drops, and if he drops a little bit, maybe I grab him. But yeah, different roles matter for these guys. Can he end up way exceeding expectations, taking on more? Absolutely. But is there a chance that he takes a little bit of a downtick in fantasy production because he's playing with less, skilled players? Absolutely. So that's one of those things, when you're drafting a guy like Nylander that high in your draft, you want to take those things into consideration for sure.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. And again, I wouldn't shy away from Nylander. Still a really, really good player. But it just may be the difference in him being like a top 20 pick versus a top 30 pick. So more to come on Nylander. Another guy, Pavel Zacha over in Boston. Zacha, he spent years over in New Jersey. Now he's over at Boston. He played there last year, but Boston's another team cap strapped. They had a couple retirements as well. So they end up having, two of their players eluding me now. I actually know Krejci's actually one of them. And Bursch, I'm having a brain fart, JT, but nevertheless, they had a couple of different retirements on their team. So now they end up opening some spots, but they still have a whole lot of cap issues as well. So they're actually asking now Zacha to go up to that top line and that top power play unit as well and actually be the center there. Think about the players they have, at right wing, they end up having Pasternak. Left wing, they have Marchand. They got DeBrusque, and they end up having guys like that are actually proven, that have actually in this league, and a couple of them like Marchand and Pasternak are superstars. He gets an opportunity to play with those guys now. He's entering into the first year of his 4-year, $4.75 million deal. So you got to think they're committed to him. All right, so he's going to get every opportunity to end up increasing his point production. He's traditionally been one of those guys that's about a half point per game, right around 35 to 40 points a season over an 82 game, pace, if you will. And he usually averages around 15 and a half to 16 minutes on time of ice a game. Last year, he only had 8 power play points. It's not a guy I'd reach for. I'd likely probably go in the latter half of drafts. However, given his line mates, he could be in for a career year, especially if his time on ice gets up there to, let's say, from 16 to maybe closer to 18. And if he ends up having those 8 power play points within, let's say, the first 15 games, you need to jump on this guy right now. And especially if he's on the waiver wire, especially in those not so deep leagues, get on him because that deployment's ridiculous.
Yeah, I think those are the ones you want to look out for. Is like, hey, we're going to get a guy, in the top half of your drafts. Most drafts are going to go pretty in order. People are going to go right down chalk down the line and take the next best guy. But these are the guys you want to see where the deployment's kind of changed and see, hey, maybe I take him a round or two earlier than I typically would because he is going to see better blind mates and there's going to be a chance that his scoring far exceeds what his fantasy production has been in the past. Maybe you take this. What do you think, Toast? Maybe you take this guy mid rounds. What do you think? A 12th round, 10th round for Zacha?
Yeah, it seems about right. I would say probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 120th, 130th overall. But depending on how your roster rounds out in the earlier rounds and your format of your league, if he's sitting there at pick 90, pick 95, somewhere around there, and his deployment early on, and given the fact that they're up against the cap, they're committed to him for 4 years, he's not going anywhere, you may reach a little bit. And I can actually fault anybody for reaching on a guy like that. So he should be on everybody's radar. If I nail the first 7, 8 rounds and I'm sitting there, I'm like, man, my roster is stacked. He's probably a guy I'm going to go say, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and hawk him. I'm going to go ahead and get him. I'm going to put him on my bench. We have an injury or off days. I'm going to bring him up. And then he can always be a trade chip later on for me as well, especially if I'm real deep.
Now, as a Hawks fan, super exciting offseason. We had to see everybody go through, getting rid of all the stars. Kaner's gone. Taze is gone. All the guys that brought all those titles and championships to the Windy City. All of them moved on. It looked really desperate, really bare. And then Connor Bedard showed up. I mean, I remember you were just so pumped. We got together for the draft, watching that. Tell me what you think about Bedard. Usually you don't see these rookies come in right away and produce. There's guys like in a dynasty league you definitely want in a dynasty. But even in a keeper league like this, how high do you think that he could go in a traditional redraft or keeper league draft? And again, what kind of production do you see out of a guy this young, but he's so talented?
Yeah, he's probably conservatively his floor this year, barring injury, right? Chicago's going to be no good, and that's by design. But I think, honestly, they may be a little bit better than people's going to give him credit for. It's probably 60 points. 60 points between goals and assists is going to be his floor. He has a ceiling of around 90 points, and that's how good he is. Not many rookies actually get out there and do that, especially on teams where he has no line mates to speak of. But we can't really say that considering he has Taylor Hall as a line mate. He's going to have Lucas Reichel, who's a young up-and-coming star in the league that's going to be on a power play 1 as well. He's got some talent around him, but just some unproven talent or some talent that has had some question marks around him in the past. But this guy, they call him a generational talent for a reason. You don't call many players like that. There's been probably 4 or 5 over the past 25 years that have been called that, and every single one of them end up being a hit. They end up being a household name, and everybody knows who they are. I'm going to give a line here, in practice. And hey, we're talking about practice, all right, JT, and exhibition games. But in the Hawks' his first 2 exhibition games with a Hawks jersey on, he scored 5 goals. The first one was in a showcase rookie. All right, he's playing against other players of his caliber. 3 goals. He had 11 shots on goal that game. Okay, most guys could have all the hype, but yet not produce, but he produced. Second one was their first inter scrimmage game with the Hawks. He had 2 goals. Him and Lucas Reichel were on separate teams. They were by far and away the best players on the ice. Wasn't even actually close. Had a couple goals. Most rookies, doesn't matter how talented they are, they usually come in, they defer to the older guys, and they don't really come out there and show themselves like that. This guy, it makes no difference at all. If it's a redraft league, you're probably looking at Bedard somewhere the bottom. I'd say the floor is probably somewhere in pick 65, 70. And the ceiling there for actually how early you could actually get him would be somewhere in around overall pick number 35 to 40. But in dynasty leagues, he better be going number 1. All right. So in our league, I can already announce this. Let's go ahead and get the draft going in our keeper league. I had the first pick in the draft. He will be number 1. He's going to me. I'm actually getting him because I'm banking that he's going to be McDavid in 2 years, 3 years. And we all know if somebody has McDavid, we have the same guy in our leagues had McDavid for the past, since 2016. Whenever he's actually entered the league, he'll always have him as well. So that's what I'm actually banking on as well. So with Bedard, I mean, he's just different. He's different talent. And you got to look at that redraft versus dynasty leagues and to see where you're going to get him.
Yeah, I love that. I remember getting Draisaitl early before we kind of had a lot of changeover in our league and we kind of reset the keepers. I had him really late and was keeping him every year, and it was glorious. But yeah, if you can keep a guy like that, even if he's your first round keeper, you got to keep him. I mean, that's fantastic. A little bit of change in Pittsburgh. We already talked about Boston, with some of the things going on there. Let's talk a little bit about Pittsburgh, Chris Letang, and what's kind of going on with the Penguins.
Yeah, so Letang and the Penguins, but we'll first talk about the Penguins, and they're old. They're one of the oldest teams. It's not the oldest team in the league. Their window to actually win is now. But how is Letang, with Pittsburgh? He's been that mainstay as that power play 1 quarterback for a decade, right? He has been their guy. But they end up changing general managers. Kyle Dubas actually comes over from Toronto, and the first move he ends up making is he gets Erik Karlsson. So now you end up having 2 stud older defensemen on the same team. So you got to think, all right, here's been Letang. He's been a top 5 defenseman. Letang ends up getting you hits, blocks. He ends up scoring goals on power play points as well. All those peripherals that you end up wanting to get a lot of points in the league. But now he's got to share that spotlight with a guy like Erik Karlsson. So what are they going to do? Are they going to put them both on power play 1? Are they going to go roll out 2 defensemen? Or are they going to even that out? Gensel will start the season on the injured reserve. However, it's only going to be for maybe 5-7 games. He'll be back in there. So are you going to go with Crosby, which he'll be on power play 1? Gensel will be there. Malkin, he's not going anywhere. There's a mainstays on power play 1. But then you got other guys like Riley Smith, who's actually coming over from Vegas. Ricard Raquel as well is going to actually get a pretty good shot there and be on a top line with Crosby. And then you got Brian Rust, who's a proven guy as well. So there's a lot of mouths to feed over there. And really, Letang is an interesting situation because he suffered a stroke back in 2014, and he had another one last year. So you got to think about health concerns given the fact that I think he's 35 years old. If I had to guess, I think he's somewhere around here. He's got some question marks at actually health. So how far is he going to slide down the draft board? Now, we're having all this discussion, JT, and I'll tell you, in our home league, the majority of home leagues out there, they're not going to do that type of research on Letang, right? But for those podcast leagues you're actually in, where everybody actually absorbs every single thing by every single player, it's going to make a difference. You're going to see Letang actually drop in drafts. It's going to be Carlson's going to go first. Letang's going to go 4 or 5 rounds later on. But do you take a chance on Letang to actually be your second defenseman on your team? And who knows, Lightning in the bottle ends up getting on that top power play and stays there, and he's end up being healthy. Man, you hit a home run there. So something to look at with Letang. That's a very, very interesting situation that's going on in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, we're coming up right on the hour mark here for us on the Stew with JT Brew, our second hockey podcast. We'll be bringing them to you throughout the year. Check us out. Obviously, usually, as you see, we're usually a football podcast for most of the time, but hockey season's upon us, and we can't leave hockey behind. So that's why I love it. Toast, you can check him out on Toast Clark on the X. You can look me up, hit me up on anything, questions you got, football or hockey related at JT Orange on the X. Make sure to check us out on all your platforms, Spotify, Apple, all that good stuff. You can find us there. Thanks for joining us. That's going to do it for us here on Around the Ice with JT and Toast on the Stew with JT Brew. May all your draft picks hit and the trading never quit. Check you guys next time. Appreciate you checking us out. Have a good one.
You up on trades and wire moves, you ain't designed to lose. Find you jumping over seemingly nothing, racking up points, makes the game a little more fun to watch. Can drop release, we started with the mock